This video is sponsored by Paradox Interactive. Hey everybody, it's Party Elite, and today we're kicking off a beginner's guide to Empire of Sin. Set in Chicago during the Prohibition Era, Empire of Sin blends traditional RPG elements with appropriate empire building and strategy mechanics with tactical combat to tie it all together. With so many moving parts to talk about, let's not waste any more time. Today we're taking a look at 7 essentials before you start in Empire of Sin. The characters. Empire of Sin is a strategy game, yes, but at its heart lies the various characters of the world, primarily the bosses and the gangsters. The first order of business when starting a new game involves picking who you'll be playing as. Each of these 10 characters have their own storylines that you can play through on top of the generic missions available to all of them. Apart from that, each also has their own specializations. You can read about each of their special abilities and buffs as you flip through your options on this screen, but only when you start the game can you truly see all the details of each. Diving into depth about each of the 10 characters calls for a separate video, and if you're interested in that, let me know down below. For now, I want to talk about these screens in broader strokes. I want to explain what you're looking at so you have a bit of an understanding of how to analyze these screens and the characters yourself. Each character has a class, attributes, traits, relationships, effects, and skills, while bosses also have notoriety and honor to worry about. Class determines what weapon proficiencies the character starts with and what skills the character can learn over time. All of your starting character options fall under the same class, boss, so you can expect all starts to be the same on that front. Everything else, though, is different. Attributes determine things like ranged and melee capabilities, when in the turn order a character will make their move in battle compared to others, how far they can move per turn when in battle, and their ability to dodge being hit. Attributes also determine which conversation options are viable based on how good your character is at things like intimidation, leadership, and persuasion, and these all have further relevance for other characters that we'll discuss in just a moment. Attributes are improved in a couple of ways. For one, crossing notoriety thresholds bumps them up every so often, though some attributes will start taking a hit the more notorious you get. Attributes are also improved by using them in missions, so make sure to chase side quests that give you these opportunities. Also worth noting, speaking to the journalist early on allows you to improve your attributes based on the backstory you create for yourself. So don't hesitate to take that mission on. It's a very early one. Look out for it. Now, traits exist in a variety of forms in Empire of Sin, and they can have positive, negative, mixed, or dormant effects outside of specific conditions. There are traits that characters start with, and other traits they'll gain over the course of a game through events, leveling up, or performing specific actions. In this way, you can spec your characters the way you want through their behavior. Get kills using a handgun, you'll gain traits that improve handgun proficiency. Use rifles to rack up kills, become better at using them instead. Pretty intuitive. And make sure to pay special attention to traits as their impacts are often not immediately evident. Some will have their effects reflected in the attributes they change, while others will have more nuanced impacts, like making a character better at flanking, having management effects under specific circumstances, only triggering when drunk, or only triggering when near allies in combat. Relationships are interpersonal relationships, and they determine how characters feel about working with each other, or how they feel when injury or death befall one another. This is very important to look out for because, for example, if you have friends or lovers in your gang together and one of them dies, the other one ends up crestfallen, they lose morale, and that can cause some issues. On the flip side, if you have enemies working together in your gang, that can be a source of friction as well, in a much more violent manner. Effects are a culmination of traits, skills, and status effects. If a character is drunk, bleeding, slowed, etc., it shows up over here. Now, skills can be seen on this screen, and characters of the same class all have access to the same set of skills. Skills are learned over time, and when you choose one from a tier, you lock the other options at that tier, and will only have access to the selected skill after the aforementioned time has passed. Often, it takes multiple weeks of in-game time for a selected skill to actually be unlocked and usable. Skills unlock new weapon proficiencies, new abilities, upgrades to existing weapon proficiencies, or certain immunities. As you can imagine, character classes and skills go hand in hand to make sure those of a specific class shine in a specific way. Notoriety is exclusive to the boss character and is gained by performing any activity fitting of a mobster, lost by doing the opposite. Notoriety is an important aspect of your selected mob boss's growth over time. At milestones of 50 early on, attributes are given a boost, and as notoriety goes up, upgrades to your rackets will become cheaper as well. The final piece of the puzzle here is honor. Honor is gained or lost depending on the actions you take, and the higher your honor, the more receptive other bosses will be to you. We'll touch more on notoriety and honor in just a little bit. Now, as you may have been able to tell, all of these, outside of notoriety and honor, apply to other gangsters that you and rival bosses can hire from the Black Book. Available for scrutiny and for hire at any time from the Black Book, you just need to have a high enough notoriety and be able to afford the upfront fee on an unhired gangster. With those 3 boxes checked, you can hire them directly from this screen and they'll pop up right next to you. Once they've joined you, you'll have to concern yourself with their take, their salary, if you will. You also need to properly initiate your new hires into the gang. Have them kill somebody to have them made. Traditional mafia rules don't need to be followed. Everybody has to be made to unlock all options with them. Each of these gangsters have different classes, and as mentioned before, this impacts weapon proficiency and available skills, as well as what they do as moles, and the best way to use them in combat. Doctors reduce chances of injuries in combat, and they improve healing rates while you're outside of combat, and as moles, they can plant misinformation. Hired guns are better shots, but have less health, and they can be sent to assassinate enemy bosses as a mole. Enforcers have more health and are better at melee, and they can steal money from a target when they're sent out as a mole. Demolitionists are better with throwing ranges and extend the range of explosives, and they can sabotage rackets as moles, while con artists move faster and farther, but ironically, cannot be used as moles at all. Beyond classes, you should also consider traits and attributes when hiring. Some traits will impact how ideal a hire might be as a lieutenant, and depending on their attributes, you'll want to pick hires for the roles of underboss and advisor as well. High leadership is essential for an underboss to efficiently reduce wages, while high persuasion helps in an advisor's ability to boost loyalty. On which note, increasing loyalty, morale, and notoriety. Loyalty is essential in keeping your gangsters on your side, as is morale, and these are both increased through a variety of actions. Loyalty increases naturally over time, while experiencing general success will improve morale. Whacking an enemy boss, winning battles, taking over rackets, receiving medical attention, and scoring critical hits all gradually increase morale. Killing or being party to the killing of cops, losing rackets, losing battles, and taking critical hits, meanwhile, will damage morale. Characters will gain morale when hired into a crew that has their friends or lovers as well, but beware, if that friend or lover gets badly injured, there are negative impacts, and the death of a friend or loved one will result in a very chunky hit to morale, as I mentioned earlier. Now, morale and loyalty are both also impacted by decisions you make during dilemmas. If you prove to be a good boss, you will improve both morale and loyalty, but from time to time, having a somewhat decent moral compass will hurt morale and loyalty, but perhaps bring you closer to making a relationship with the cops. There's a lot of decision-making involved there, so you want to balance, again, morale and loyalty as key ways to keep the gangsters by your side. Now, the last of these 3 aspects applies only to the boss himself, and it's a bit more involved. Notoriety, as mentioned before, is needed to hire higher-tier gangsters. Notoriety also reduces the cost of upgrades at Rackets, and at steps of 50, notoriety modifies your attributes as well. Notoriety climbs as you kill thugs, cops, BOP agents, and other gangsters, and if you use the execute action in battle, you get extra notoriety for the kill, and even more so for doing it out in the open, in public, on the streets. So in combat, make sure you take every opportunity to execute enemies who are down but not dead before you take out the last enemy target. This lets you rack up notoriety faster, earlier. It's not as essential later on, but early in the game, it can get you climbing the ladder a lot faster. Taking over rackets and derelict buildings increases notoriety as well, as does eliminating enemy bosses, and again, even more so if you do it using the execute action. Various decision-making opportunities in missions will give you the chance to increase your notoriety as well, depending on the choices you make, and almost all missions will increase notoriety by a bit when you accomplish them. As you can imagine, being a notorious gangster has its downsides too. The more notorious you are, the less likely you are to see success in your relationship with the cops, for example. And on the topic of relationships, don't underestimate diplomacy. On your way to the top, you're going to need to partake in diplomacy. Whether it's to make non-aggression pacts, temporary as they might be, or to create mutually beneficial business arrangements, diplomacy is not something you should set aside. Nobody is too tough for friends, and you can rest assured that the other mob bosses are teaming up to take out mutual threats. They will do the same to you, and when you find yourself at war with an alliance of 3 factions, the Bureau of Prohibition will be the least of your concerns. Diplomatic relations are built right from your first encounter with another gang's crew. The first interaction is almost always a little aggressive from the other side, and it can be tempting to respond in kind. But remember, you're the small fish in a very big, scum-filled pond, so it's not a bad idea to be on your best behavior at first. A sit-down will give you the opportunity to speak to the other boss, and things can go one of 2 ways. Whether you make small talk or not, it all boils down to making a deal to help each other out. The benefits of the deal to either side of the conversation are determined by the bosses. Each boss, as you saw during the boss selection process, specializes in certain types of rackets. Entering into a business arrangement with one of them helps those rackets of yours, while you help theirs based on your specializations. This is, of course, a double-edged sword. You are strengthening your future enemies, so you want to be careful not to strengthen the already powerful by too much. Business arrangements with one crew might cause friction with other crews too. The friend of my enemy is my enemy, you might say, so by getting too close with too many crews, you're bound to upset somebody. They'll ask you to end your business arrangement, and no matter what you decide to do, you'll be upsetting somebody inevitably. Looking at the diplomacy screen, you can see not only details about the bosses and gangs you've already met, but you'll also find other ways to interact with them. You can also interact with the cops and small-time gangs that you've met as well. These don't have bosses out of the 10 you can choose from, and you only have a handful of options as far as diplomatic conversations are concerned as well, because they are just generic small-time crooks by comparison. When interacting with other bosses, the aforementioned honor comes into play, determining how amenable they are to your requests and suggestions. You can see your own, and you can see theirs. Being true to your word, having non-aggression pacts with any of the gangs, making the appropriate decisions during missions, not stabbing people in the back, all of these will increase your honor. You can also see what the other gang thinks of you, and why, and how much of a threat others perceive you as, and why. Now, being a threat makes you more likely to be the target of their aggressive actions, not feared by them, so do keep that in mind. The topics of conversation between bosses are relatively straightforward. You can trade items, alcohol, and money, so if you're in need of one with an excess of another, that's what you're looking for. Now, if you're in urgent need of money and you don't mind upsetting the person you're talking to for it, feel free to disguise your low-quality alcohol as the good stuff to get a better deal. You can, of course, do the same to get items you're eyeing too, but be warned either way, if you get found out, it's very likely that heads will have to roll. You can also formally declare war here, details of which we'll discuss in just a moment. You can offer tribute, should a potential threat to your empire need temporary appeasing, and you can also arrange for a standing order. These are long-term trade deals. You can also set up business arrangements in the cases where you didn't do a sit-down on the first meeting, or when a business arrangement naturally expires and you would like to establish a new one. You can also establish non-aggression pacts and protection arrangements, a way to make some extra money or to stay safe from the bigger players early on. You can request a sit-down if the appropriate circumstances are met, but you can only request favors if you have an existing business arrangement. Not all of these options are available for the small-time criminal organizations, like I said earlier, and cops have a completely different set of diplomatic options. Bribing the cops is the first step to unlocking a plethora of options, but you need to be real friendly with the police if you want to take advantage of the more interesting options here, like having police protection for your organization. Making the right calls during events and bribing the cops from time to time is the best way to improve relations, and make sure you don't kill any cops during a shootout. Try not to engage in combat near them on the street, since they'll be dragged into it, and if it ends up happening, you can always escape combat rather than kill cops to avoid that relations penalty you get from it. Having the cops in your pocket and a few fellow mob bosses on your side can be invaluable as you go about your day-to-day activities. The friendly mob bosses are especially handy when it comes time for war. There's only enough room for one mob boss in Chicago at the end of the day, so war is inevitable. From time to time, you'll be invited into war by others. You can take them up on their request and be sure to make some claims if you do. You can demand things right off the bat, and you can also make claims to certain rackets of the targeted mob boss. Keep your demands reasonable, and they'll be on board. This means that anytime one of your claimed rackets gets taken over by one of the allies that is involved in the war, its ownership is immediately transferred over to you. This is an efficient and very easy way to expand your business ventures. At times of war, you'll be able to see where your allies are planning on striking, and you can right-click and mark targets yourself as well. This can be used to tell allies that they should wait for you outside before attacking, if you're assisting them, and it can also be used to draw allied squads to targets that you'd rather see struck first, such as the targets you have claims on, because you want to make sure that you fight for them and that you win them before the war is done. Hovering over an allied targeting icon will give you details about what's going on as it relates to that particular target. Now, while you can't see enemy targeting, you can see their squads moving around, and any with the same target icon above their heads are out for blood, and you should make it a point to intercept them before they cause you any harm. In a worst case scenario, your warning will come when the guards outside of a racket are engaged. Fight that battle, pause the game, and then immediately look at upgrading the racket outside of which the fighting happened. Bolster its defenses, or travel over to it yourself to defend it in the inevitable interior battle to come. One of the fastest ways to end a war in your favor, however, involves going straight for the head. Have a solid crew, well equipped and ready for action. Travel to your target's safe house. Declare war. Then, attack the safe house and kill the boss. You don't even need to win the battle, though doing so will grant you the boss's unique equipment as a reward. You can opt to simply kill the boss, escape the safe house, and just like that, your authority is recognized. You immediately get control over everything the dead mob boss once had. All of their rackets are yours without the need to attack each one individually or slowly dismantle their strength. Just make sure you're properly equipped for the attack on the safe house. They are very well guarded with well-armored and well-armed guards, often carrying dynamite sticks or grenades or otherwise capable of taking you out. Any gangsters that have been hired by the enemy mob boss will also likely be present at the safe house, and they are extremely skilled compared to your regular guards, so be prepared. It's not like you're going to be able to do this right off the bat. You will need to raise your notoriety, hire a few gangsters, equip them appropriately, and then start going for these big moves. Be careful as well about expanding too quickly, though. Being in too many people's territories at once can anger them all at once, and that's how you end up being on the receiving end of a joint war effort. Explore during downtime. When you're not fighting wars or taking over rackets, there's still plenty to do on the mean streets of Chicago. Traveling around is as easy as clicking around in this zoomed-in mode, but I find zooming out to this map mode can make it easier to manage things as you progress through the game and things get larger and larger. Not only are you able to give orders to your currently selected character, but you're also able to select different characters to give synchronized orders across Chicago's 10 neighborhoods if needed. You can manage multiple groups for multiple activities, and you can get a better overview of what's going on before you give an order to begin with. Beyond that, this view allows you to use the Travel To order to teleport characters from where they stand to any highlighted building across the 10 neighborhoods that's not hidden by the fog of war. Right-clicking on taxis, meanwhile, let you use the command regardless of the fog of war. These orders can be given to characters who are located anywhere. They don't have to start at the same spot either. Be careful though. Teleporting like this means you skip out on the passive healing that takes place over time as you physically walk around. It does, however, allow you to respond to an emergency immediately. Use this map mode to spot possible aggression from other gangs, the cops, and the Bureau of Prohibition, and move around accordingly. I also suggest using the pause button freely to take stock of what's going on from time to time and respond accordingly. There's a lot going on at any given time. There's no shame in using the pause button. There are 10 neighborhoods and countless gangsters to keep in mind. Do it often. There's also lots to be proactive about. Learning the lay of the land, establishing rackets, and meeting other bosses is one thing, but there's plenty more too. For one, there are dead drops with valuable equipment to be found across the 10 neighborhoods, and your enemies are looking for them too. Make sure you beat them to the punch. They're typically guarded by thugs that you can spot as the beige markers on the map, and so it's not a bad idea to engage said thugs in the hopes of finding such a cache. Fighting thugs in general is a good idea to begin with too. Each combat encounter has a chance of making you money, gaining notoriety, earning traits through actions, and getting you loot. And if the loot you get isn't actually worth using, you can always sell it on the black market for instant cash. This is especially helpful for when you want to establish a racket in a pinch. We'll touch more on that in just a little bit. Remember that when you're about to engage an enemy, be it a thug or a member of an enemy gang, you can hit Control to ambush them before they begin the battle. This gets you an extra action before the battle truly begins. Now, apart from caches and thugs, you should also chase after people of interest. A conversation with a journalist might boost your attributes, a chat with an editor-in-chief might improve relations with other mobsters, and beyond that, the side quests will often send you from place to place, doing things that don't directly relate to your business and primary objectives, but tie into your character's personal storyline or general growth over the course of a game. Some of these side quests can lead to massive windfalls, others can damage the reputations of other gangs, while others still will see you gain favors from the cops from time to time. Staying idle during your downtime will result in your competition leaving you in the dust. I guess what that means is there really isn't such a thing as downtime when you're trying to run your own mob. Understanding rackets, booze, and cash. Rackets are the core driving force of Empire of Sin. They are the beating heart of your economy, and their acquisition, management, and defense are going to play a key part of your playthroughs from beginning to end. Acquiring rackets can be done in a few ways. With enough money in your pocket, you can go to any building marked as available for purchase and simply buy the property, establishing the racket type that you'd like. More often than that, primarily because it's much cheaper, you're likely going to want to clear out derelict buildings to take them over instead. These are defended by thugs, with the difficulty of the ensuing battle clearly marked, but winning the battle means you'll get some loot and cash, and you'll be able to establish the building as one of the racket types at a lower cost than if it was a purchased building. And if you can't afford that, you can always ransack the building instead to possibly get extra loot and money, or you can trash the place in order to prevent others from being able to take advantage of it for a prolonged period of time. Finally, attacking a rival gang's pre-existing racket will gain you loot and cash, and will also allow you to take over the business as it stands for free, or you can convert it to another type of business at a cost. You can also choose to ransack or trash the place if it's just not worth your effort to maintain or it doesn't align with your strategy, but this is the cheapest way to expand, though it does require you to overcome the defenders in battle, and it hurts your relationship with the target gang, of course. When choosing locations for your rackets, keep in mind that building size makes an actual difference to the output of the building. Rackets can either be small, medium, or large. The larger they are, the more they produce, whether that's booze or cash. Now, safe houses aren't really rackets, but having a safe house in a neighborhood you're planning on holding is a good idea. Not only does it give you a spot to heal at faster, but it also produces a marginal amount of alcohol and allows you to assign a lieutenant to the neighborhood, taking advantage of character trait-related buffs. You can upgrade security to get more guards, production rates to produce more alcohol, and alcohol quality to get access to higher qualities of booze. Breweries produce alcohol as their sole purpose, and they are essential to the sustainability of your empire. Without booze, almost nothing else runs. Alcohol is also important for trade and establishing standing orders, as discussed earlier, and its production features in a few quests and points of conversation as well. It's very important to produce alcohol and to maintain a stockpile of it. If your breweries get shut down by the cops or the BOP, you want to make sure you have some alcohol left stored up to tide you over until you get control of your breweries again, something that can take weeks in-game. Larger breweries are able to produce more alcohol at a time, and a medium brewery with no upgrades comes close to producing just as much alcohol as a fully upgraded small brewery, so that should put how size makes a difference into perspective. But relying on one large brewery is a risk if it gets raided and shut down, so you'll want to mix and match the sizes of your rackets with how much you rely on them. Now, brewery upgrades include better defenses, a reduction in police raid chances, faster production rates, better quality alcohol production, and larger storage capacities. Between the safe houses and the breweries, make sure you're producing the type of alcohol the neighborhood actually wants. Clicking on the Empire Overview screen, or zooming out all the way on the map, will show you exactly what each neighborhood wants to drink. Serving this at your rackets will net you a percentage bonus to your income, so you'll want to upgrade alcohol quality to the right level, and then go to your alcohol info panel, set it as the item to produce here, and then go to your consumption tab to set it as the alcohol you're actually serving to match the neighborhood's desires. As you can see in the storage tab, each type of alcohol is tracked separately, so you need to make sure you're setting production and service for every new brewery and every new neighborhood where you have a presence. Speakeasies are bars where the sale of alcohol is what brings in the money. You can upgrade the security, the ability to avoid police raids, ambience, and word of mouth. Improved ambience directly improves your income. Guests are willing to spend more at a spot they like the vibe of. A racket with improved ambience will also sell for a higher price. If you decide you're done with owning a particular business, the sale price of a building is always half of its current value. Word of mouth, meanwhile, increases how likely guests are to come to your establishment rather than a competitor's. This is only really worth upgrading when you're having trouble maintaining a full load of customers. Upgrades all have an initial cost, and they increase the weekly upkeep cost of the racket as well, so don't just get them for the sake of it. Note also that serving poor quality alcohol will hurt your income. Desperate times call for desperate measures, sure, but try to maintain quality control if you want to amplify your earnings. Brothels work without alcohol, though its inclusion does improve their efficiency. The upgrades here are the same as a speakeasy, and it works much the same way as well. Casinos are high-risk investments. You can earn big, but your guests can win big too. I suggest getting a steady flow of income with a few speakeasies before looking at buying some casinos. They have similar upgrades to the other rackets with the addition of upgrades to games. These impact your income significantly at the cost of upkeep, but there's almost no reason not to go all the way with upgrading games here and ambience across the board. Just like size determines production of a brewery, size determines how many customers and therefore how much income a speakeasy, brothel, or casino can provide. At larger sizes, however, buildings gain suspicion more easily as they draw larger crowds. If a particular racket of any kind gets too suspicious, it might be hit with a raid. This will start a battle at the establishment, hurting your reputation with the authorities, and if they win, it will shut your business down for a very long time. This is no joke. These guys come in large numbers, and you'll see your gangsters arrested or killed without hesitation. To avoid this, keep an eye on suspicion levels from time to time, and close down any rackets that are in the red zone. Every week, suspicion will drop by a bit, and pretty soon, you'll be all clear to open up again. The temporary closure will still cost you upkeep without making you any money or booze, depending on the type of racket, but it's a better outcome than having all your joints raided at once, leaving you with no income, liquid or otherwise. Hotels aren't a type of racket either, but they increase the number of customers being served in a neighborhood, and they improve any benefits you're reaping from synergies. And in fact, You can only build a hotel in a neighborhood where you already have a synergy. So let's talk about Racket Synergies. Opening up the Empire overview screen and flipping through the various neighborhoods will show you a fair bit of detail that is pretty self-explanatory, but Racket Synergies are perhaps the most important thing to touch on here, and they also stand out as a little unclear, especially if you're not familiar with poker. Like, what does a full house or a straight mean? 80s sitcoms and the way I drink my scotch? No. There are 5 kinds of synergies, and any one neighborhood can have each of them active. To attain a synergy, you have to purchase rackets, or otherwise acquire rackets, in accordance to the synergy you want to obtain. 3 of a kind is triggered by having 3 of the same kind of racket, while 5 of a kind is triggered by having 5 of the same kind of racket. 2 pair involves having 2 of one kind and 2 of another, hence 2 pairs. A full house is triggered by having 3 of a kind and a pair of another. So, for example, 3 speakeasies and 2 casinos is a full house. And a straight involves having 1 of each: a brewery, a speakeasy, a brothel, and a casino. These synergies exist on a per neighborhood basis, so having 3 speakeasies spread across 3 neighborhoods will not trigger a synergy, but having all 3 in one neighborhood will get you 3 of a kind. Any one specific establishment can only be part of any one type of synergy, and the game automatically assigns them based on what matches for the highest racket synergy bonus. The rackets that are part of a synergy will each see the appropriate synergy bonus applied to their income and production rates, and if you have a hotel in the same neighborhood as the synergy, you will see these bonuses double. I cannot stress enough how valuable it is to aim for these synergies. Having 5 large casinos on top of a hotel to double the 5 of a kind bonus, for example, is the equivalent of printing money, which, for the record, is also illegal. These tips should help you get a running start in the seedy underbelly of Chicago. Just make sure you don't get booked for tax evasion. I can't help you with that. If you have any thoughts of your own that you'd like to share, any ideas, opinions, questions, suggestions, feel free to do so down below. Again, if you have any topics that you'd like to see covered on the channel as well as it pertains to Empire of Sin and perhaps a beginner's guide series, leave a comment down below or let me know at our Discord, linked in the description down below as well. As always, a massive thanks goes out to all of my channel members and patrons for supporting the channel on a monthly basis. Y'all keep us alive and running smoothly. And of course, a big ol' thanks goes out to each and every one of you for watching. Until next time, cheers.